Hi everyone, my name is Keely and I'm the owner and creator here at Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for another video. Now over on the Create with Soy and Shea Patreon page, I asked my members which moisturizer recipe that they would like to receive as part of their $5 and above benefits for the month. And a majority of people voted for a face cream, so that is what we're going to be making today. Now if you'd like to get your hands onto this face cream recipe, all you need to do is follow the link down in the description box for the Patreon page, sign up at the $5 or above level, and you'll have access to the recipe for the next 3 months. And after 3 months, I'll be moving it into one of the next levels up, so it will still be available for anyone who does join up after that at the higher level. But for now, let's go and see how I make my face cream. Let's go. Okay, so before I start any of my moisturizers, I always get myself a bain-marie system going. So that is just simply a pot with some boiling water that I can sit other pots and jugs inside of. I find that using a bain-marie rather than putting my oils and water onto direct heat just stops me from overheating and scalding the oils or boiling off too much water. In my big saucepan here, I have my water content, and I'm also going to add in my humectant as well, so that makes this nice and moisturizing. So we'll get that one in. Okay, so we've got all of phase A weighed out, and I need to now heat this up. To stop the water from evaporating from out of this, what I'm going to do is cover the top of this pan with some, this is like a silicone lid sort of thing. You're meant to be able to use it as cling wrap or for baking trays and stuff like that. What I find I do need to do is just put an elastic band around it just to make sure I get a really nice tight seal, and then I will pop my lid on top. Now I know how much water I tend to lose when I do my boiling, so I always add that in at the beginning. But if you don't know how much you tend to use, I'm going to tear out my scales and I'm going to weigh this whole pot, and I've got it coming up at 1.26 kilos. I'll write that down, and then when we have finished warming this water up, we'll reweigh it and see if we need to add any more distilled water into it to bring it back up to the weight that we need. But for now, what I'm going to do is sit it inside this bain-marie here and let that come up to a temperature of about 80 to 85 degrees Celsius. Alright, so while that is coming up to heat, I am going to measure out my phase B, which is my oil phase, and also has this very important ingredient, which is emulsifying wax. And this is what helps the oils and water bind together to create the lotion. So the next thing I'm going to do is add in the oils that I want to use for my face cream. Now for a face cream, I want very light oils, and I want oils which are very low pore clogging. So all the ones I choose to use in my recipe here come in at no higher than a 1 or 2 on the level. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the word, but I will put it across the bottom of the screen so you know which scale it is that I actually refer to when I am picking which oils to use in which body products. So I'll finish getting these oils in here. When I'm really close to the amount of oil that I need and I don't want to overshoot, I always pour a little bit into the cap and measure it from out of the cap, and then that way I make sure I don't pour too much oil in here. And another little trick I have for you, so this one I only need a small amount of this oil, and I like to take a skewer, I just put it against the edge of the bottle and I start to pour, and it just gives me a nice steady stream which I can then actually control, and I don't pour out too much. A bit harder to do this technique with those bigger bottles, which is why I use the cap for the big bottles and I use my skewer for this. Okay, so now we've got phase B all measured out. I'm going to pop that into my second bain-marie over here. What you want to make sure is when you are putting it into your bain-marie that your water is high enough that it's going to actually heat the ingredients, but you don't want it so high that it's going to bubble up and spill over into these ingredients. Otherwise you've actually wasted all those ingredients there and you'll have to start again. But what I'm going to do is leave these sit here. It usually takes about 20 minutes for me at this size, and then they should be up to about 80 to 85 degrees, and we will be able to start combining them together. Okay, so these have been heating for about 20 minutes now, and what I like to do is when I take these out of my water here, I like to give my jugs and my pans a really good wipe down just to make sure we don't get any cross-contamination of water from out of our bain-marie into our oils and our other water. I'm just going to grab the thermometer here. I know, because I make this quite a lot, that leaving this for 20 minutes is just the right amount of time for this size batch. I have got a temperature of about 84 degrees Celsius on there, so I'm really happy with that one. And I need my water phase to be within that sort of same mark. What we'll do is we'll pick that up. I'm going to tear my scale out here, and we're going to pick it up and pop it onto our scale, because then we can also weigh this at the same time. Because I have sealed this so well, I am actually still sitting at, well, it's actually 1.259, so I've only lost 1 gram of water. But what I am going to do, underneath this silicone here, some water did build up from the steam. I'm going to make sure I get all of that off so we don't drip any into our main mix. And once we've got all that off, alright, so we've come down to 1.257, so we've still only lost about 3 grams of water there, so that is nothing to be too worried about. So let's get our lid off of there, tap that water into the bottom, and then I'm going to peel that one off. Shake our water into the pot so we don't lose any. Now the easiest way I find to do it when I'm doing these smaller batches is I take my jug that has got my oils in, and then I pour my water into my oils, and it's because it is much easier to clean water out of the saucepan or to clean a lotion out of the jug, but it's not so easy to clean oils out of the jug. Now that we've got those two together, you can see that it's gone a milky white colour, and that is what we want. We want the oils and water to emulsify, and it goes white when it does. I've got my immersion blender here. You need to have a stick blender or immersion blender to do this, because you need that really fast propeller action to emulsify your oils and water together. So I'm going to give this a few, maybe 5 to 10 second pulses for the next minute. Alright, so I have given that a few pulses, and what I now want to do is let it sit here and rest. So I'm going to take that silicone cloth that I had over the saucepan, and I'm actually now going to put it over the jug, because I still don't want any of this water to evaporate while this is hot. So this is a really important bit to do. So I've put my band around it, and I'm also going to pop the lid on just to make sure none of that water escapes from out of here. We'll come back in about maybe 5 minutes to give this another pulse with the stick blender. Okay, so this has now had its second lot of blending, and what I'm going to do is leave this sit here until it gets to about 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, and then I will come back and I will add in the preservative. But while it's sitting here, I'm going to leave it covered so that it doesn't lose any of that water content, and I will also keep an eye on it. If you are making larger batches of this, sometimes you need to actually stick blend it a few times just to make sure that it is fully emulsified, but on a small batch like this, those 2 lots of stick blending is enough to keep it emulsified. So as I said, I'm going to leave this one sit here until it gets down to about 30 to 40 degrees Celsius, and then we'll come back and add in phase C. Okay, so this has now been sitting here for a little while, and I have been keeping an eye on it to make sure that the emulsion doesn't break, and it's looking really good. I did just take its temperature a moment ago. We were sitting at about 41 degrees. I am going to put it in my extras in now because I have to go and feed my dog. She's pestering me for her food. You can see that since we first made this, this is starting to thicken up now, and that's what your creams should do. They'll be really milky and watery when you first start, and as it cools down and comes down to room temperature, it will get nice and thick. That's why when you leave your moisturizers, say in the car or on a hot windowsill or something, they get really thin because they're actually heating up and they thin back out. And as soon as it comes back down to, you know, under those sort of 25 sort of degrees, it will actually thicken back up on you. But what I'm going to do now is add in phase C of our mix, and this is any of the extra little goodies that you want to add in, and most importantly your preservative. And you need to make sure that when you're doing this you have a water soluble preservative, because all the preservatives out there, they are for different things, so you can't just go throwing your favorite preservative into every single formula that you make. A lot of people do like to use things like liquid germal, but it's not suitable for all applications. So make sure you are adding your proper preservatives to make sure that your water is being preserved adequately. This is also a chance to add in any other little extras like extracts. I've just put my vitamin E in to help protect the oils and to also be beneficial to the skin. And this ingredient here, this is a silicone, and I put it in there to help with the glide of this cream onto the face, because I hate thick creams on the face. But in the recipe I do give you some alternatives to use for those that prefer not to use silicones in their product. But the one I've used is perfectly safe for using, and when you check the EWG it comes up at a 1 to 3 depending upon your level, and because this is so low that I use, it sits around that 1 sort of rating, so it is actually safe to use. I'm going to get this all stirred in, and then what I'm going to do is I like to leave my creams sit overnight before bottling, and that's just to make sure that there is no condensation built up in my packaging which could affect any bacteria and things like that growing in the moisturizer. So now that I have got that all nicely mixed in, I am once again going to cover this up, because this is still warm. It is still going to lose a little bit of moisture if I'm not careful. So we'll get that covered up with the elastic band, and then I will be back tomorrow to come and put these into some tubes. Okay, so our face cream has been sitting overnight, and you can see that it has thickened up quite nicely. It is still quite a fluid moisturizer, because I do prefer them to be more fluid on the face. It just feels a lot lighter, and my body moisturizers are usually a lot thicker than this. It is now down to room temperature, so I am happy that this is at the right temperature to put into my tubes and not build up any condensation in there, which can actually cause problems later on. So to get my tubes filled, I have got one of my biodegradable piping bags in here, and I am going to put all of this cream in, and then we'll actually pipe them into the tubes. Alright, so I got the cream in the bag, and I don't use a piping tip, but I do cut the very, very tip of it off. I cut off just enough that I can get a nice even flow, but not so much that it just spills out all over the place while trying to fill these tubes up. What I'm going to do is grab my scales here, and before anyone asks, there is no brand on these scales. I get these from off of Amazon. I used to get them off of eBay. There is a link to the Australian Amazon seller that I got these from down in the description box. But if you are from another country, if you simply look up digital electronic scales on either Amazon or eBay, you will be able to find them, and lots of different places sell them. They sell them mainly for weighing vegetables, but I like these because they are actually plugged into the wall, which means that they are always accurate unless they need calibrating. I tend to find with battery operated scales, as the battery dies, they don't give me a true reading of weight. So I'm going to pop those on there and measure out exactly how much I need to squeeze into each of these containers. So we have all of our 4 bottles here filled up. I'm only doing a very small batch today because we are now at a point where all of our markets have been closed due to the virus that is going around. So I need just enough stock that if people place an order online, I've got a few bottles here, and I'll just continue to make lots of little batches while I can. I've also taken this opportunity to do a new tester, so when I go back to markets, I'll actually be throwing out all of my old testers and putting out new ones for people, so I know that they are nice and safe. Let's get some labels put on these. Okay, so I have got my labels here all ready to go. I always design and print my own labels. I use a program called Corel Draw to actually design them in, and I have a HP laser printer for doing all of my printing. Now these labels are actually a polymer label because I find them the easiest, well, they're kind of the easiest to get onto the tubes, in that they look the nicest, but they do take a little bit of getting used to being able to apply them to your packaging without them getting all creased and air bubbles. But they really are worth the extra effort to get these ones on. I find that they just last on the products a lot longer. They don't peel off, and they are also waterproof, so if this gets caught out in, say, someone's bag and they spill water, I know that the labels don't rub off them. So let me get all of these ones all labelled up. So one last thing that I like to do with all of my products is to actually seal them, and this is to make sure that nobody is actually using this product as a tester, because there's nothing worse than knowing that someone's actually used it as a tester and half your product's gone when you actually purchase it. So I like to make sure that these are kept nice and hygienic by putting on one of these little shrink bands. Now I always get questions about these shrink bands and where I get them from. Now I don't know where to get them from overseas, but for those of you that are in Australia, Aussie Soap Supplies has a wide range of these bands. You just slip them over and then you use your heat tool just to shrink them down. Okay, so that is our face cream all ready and to go out on the shelves and ready to go into orders. As I said at the start of the video, if you are after the recipe for this face cream, be sure to come and join us over on the Patreon channel at the $5 and above level so you can get access to it. Other than that, I hope you are all staying safe, aren't going too nuts while staying at home, and until the next video, I hope you do have a great one, and I'll see you then. Bye.